Folks, welcome back to my channel. It is of course another chatty get ready with me. I've very recently gotten back from the Association of Professional Piercers yearly conference in Vegas, and so I just kind of wanted to sit down and hang out and chat and talk about that. But first of all, a very huge thank you to whoever bought me the trans tape off of my wish list. Your name wasn't on it. And also someone bought me a really cute candle, but I have literally been having a very difficult week, and those two things made me incredibly happy and made my whole week better. So thank you so much. Okay, but yes, back to the topic at hand. I just-ish got back from APP Conference, and this year was so good, and I thought about making like I don't know, official video on my channel about it, but I'm still very emotional about it, and I feel like I have so much to say, so I think this format just suits me better. For those who are not aware, APP Conference, aka Conference, we just call it Conference, is the yearly Association of Professional Piercers, like, educational conference. It happens every single year, COVID permitting, in Las Vegas, and it's not a convention where we're doing piercings like a tattoo convention is. It's just a bunch of piercers taking classes that are related to body piercings, and getting education, networking with other piercers. It's just a lot of really cool, really awesome stuff. For many piercers, conference is like a really big goal. Like, the goal is to be at a point in your career where you can attend a conference. And I'm very fortunate that I have attended a couple of times. I think this year would be my 4th or 5th conference. I would have to actually check. But this was actually the first year that conference has happened in a while, thanks to COVID, obviously. I think this was the first conference since 2019, and it was my first conference since 2015. So this conference was a really big deal to me. I knew in 2019 when I moved to Nashville that I would be able to go to conference again, and that was such a huge goal. And then obviously the pandemic happened and everything happened, and there wasn't a conference until this year, so that sucked. Oh, this is definitely going to be more of like a skincare get ready with me than anything else, because again, I've been having a week, so we're practicing self-care today and taking care of our skin and being really kind to ourselves today and all of those good things. But yeah, anyway, so I had not attended conference for many years, basically the whole time I was working in Florida, and that is because I was not allowed to go to conference while I was working in Florida. If you haven't seen my apprenticeship story, I go into it in depth there, but my mentor was very paranoid about the rest of the industry and kept his apprentices in a lot of isolation from the rest of the industry. We were limited in talking to other piercers and interacting with them on forums, and obviously we could not go to conference. That was you didn't even ask to go to conference. It was not a thing that we did. So this conference was really big for me because it was my first conference being able to attend in a while. It was also my best friend Margot's very first conference ever, which was super exciting. So I am so glad that we were able to go and attend. Everything was wonderful. I got to take a bunch of great classes. A couple of the classes that stood out to me was, if you follow Classy on TikTok, she did her first class ever on jewelry styling, and it was super fantastic. She did so good. Joeltron always does really awesome classes. He did one on intact anatomy for penile piercings, and just the different considerations for folks who are intact, and he's a great teacher, very funny, very energetic, so that was super fun. And then they did the trauma-informed class again this year, and I was a little bummed to not see more piercers in that class, and I think a lot of folks didn't really understand in the course listing what it was about, but maybe my favorite class was the trauma-informed class. Well put together, it was super industry specific, and it just goes over how to work with clients who have experienced trauma, how to be a safe space for doing trauma-informed work. Obviously there's other methods for piercers to learn how to be trauma-informed, not just this one class, but that class was literally phenomenal, fantastic, amazing. And of course, all of the classes were really, really great, but those 3 stood out to me. But for me at this point, my favorite part about conference is like networking and hanging out. I got to see a ton of friends who I haven't seen in an incredibly long time. I got to reconnect with a lot of people from the suspension community who I haven't seen in an incredibly long time, and got to have some really cathartic, really healing conversations. Many of these people have not seen me in person since I left for my last apprenticeship and dealt with all of that abuse and that trauma. So there were a lot of heavy discussions and heavy interactions to be had, but those were also really the magic of conference, was being able to make those connections and have those interactions and stuff. One of my favorite thing about conference this year was how many of y'all recognize me from TikTok or YouTube or whatever the case may be. So many folks came up to me to tell me that they like my videos or my content and they find it helpful. And like 2 separate times at conference up in my room, I cried because I was so like excited and overwhelmed, and I just really appreciated all of that. I think if there was something that I really wanted to do differently, well, there's, I have a bunch of stuff now in mind for next year's conference, but one of the things that stood out to me was I guess a lot of folks were nervous about meeting me, or said that they were like intimidated to meet me, and I understand it, but it also kind of bummed me out because I really like being approached by folks and talking to people and having those conversations, and I wish I got to have more of those at conference. I actually had one group, their mentor is someone who knows me, and like dragged them over and was like, Lynn, they've been wanting to talk to you all week, like they have questions for you about like transgender genital piercings, like HRT and piercings, and they were like, we're so sorry, like we don't want to take your time. And I was like, oh my god, no, like I love talking about this, like let's talk about it. And I ended up talking about it for like 20 minutes with them, just like standing in the middle of everywhere, just hyper focused on discussing these things. And I love sharing that kind of knowledge and that education, and I say it, all year round. My inbox is always open, my email is always open, and it's always open for everyone, but I have a special place in my heart for being able to help other piercers, and especially like apprentices in front of house. So I really would encourage anyone to, message me, reach out to me, but also if you see me out at conference or out at a professional event, please come say hi. I'm really friendly and I really like talking to you, and it makes me really happy. Next year, I'm going into it hoping to have a lot more interactions like that, especially with new piercers or younger piercers or first-time conference attendees, and being able to talk to them more and hold space for them more and share education and resources and things like that. But I did spend a ton of this year, reconnecting with people I've known in the industry for a very long time, and especially reconnecting with people I knew through suspension, and selfishly, that was really healing and powerful for me. So it's still an incredibly productive conference. For those at home who are curious about attending conference, the attendance requirements change year to year. In past years, they have allowed people who are not currently working in the industry to attend, and it was a good opportunity to network and find mentors. This year with COVID, I know they did not do that. You had to be affiliated with a studio to attend, but I know a few people who weren't necessarily working in their apprenticeship yet, or working in a studio yet, who got a studio to sponsor them, to say that they were affiliated, to allow them to attend, get the education, see if this would be the right fit for them, all that good stuff. So that is an option if you have like a very close relationship with a studio who'd be willing to like kind of put their name out there to get you there. So I'm not sure what the rules will be next year. I don't know if non-piercers will be able to attend, or non-industry, I should say, because front of house and apprentices can totally attend. You just have to be affiliated with a studio. But for those at home who did not get to go this year or wanted more information about going, conference passes normally go on sale around February every year. And so scholarships run sometimes starting as early as like October, November. And there are a ton of scholarships to go to conference. And I think a lot of people don't realize this or aren't aware of this. There's a ton of scholarships to go to conference, and there's lots of different ones. There's one sponsored by the APP, there's the ALD Scholars, there's scholarships for volunteers, there's the Piercers of Color Scholarship, there's the Piercer Babe Scholarship. There's a lot of different ways to be able to attend conference. So if that's something you're thinking about for next year, I would honestly start planning for that now. Research what scholarships you want to apply to, research what the requirements for those scholarships are, research when the opening dates and deadlines for those scholarships are, look into all of that stuff, and start planning for it now. I am really excited to say that next year will be my first year hosting the front of house scholarship. I was hoping to do that this year, but with attendance requirements and COVID this year, and just a bunch of other stuff with like conference guidelines and liability, it just didn't happen this year. But it's looking like everything is in line for to go next year. So next year I will be running the front of house scholarship. It is specifically for folks who are front of house or counter people to be able to attend conference. And I am hoping to have multiple slots available to award in that scholarship. I'm still figuring out with some of the generous folks who are sponsoring it, but I'm very excited about that. Details for that I will be announcing around October on my website and also here on YouTube and all my social media, I guess. I don't know why I just said my website. So I'm incredibly excited to be hosting that and able to send some folks there through that. But yeah, if you're thinking about attending, I would start doing your checking on scholarships and like your plan for attendance and also budgeting for attending now. But it's a really phenomenal event. There are events similar to it all over the world. There's the Latin American Body Piercing Convention, there's UK APP, there's BMXNet, there's a bunch like that, but I would say that the APP that happens in Vegas every year is definitely the largest event like this, and it's like, the classes are amazing. There's an expo where you can purchase a bunch of jewelry, and you can get a lot of stuff for your studio. You can get accounts with companies that typically aren't open to accounts, but they'll take accounts at conference. You can get access to jewelry that you otherwise wouldn't be able to purchase at your studio, maybe as a company with limited releases or limited accounts, so you can bring a bunch of jewelry home for your studio. There's so many good classes and so much good education. For me, the best part about conference is networking, is hanging out at the bar or hanging out outside of classes and talking with other piercers and getting to pick their brains one-on-one about things, discussing stuff. That's where the magic happens. I was really like, there was a point in time at the bar at this conference where I was like pinching a bunch of people's backs to talk about like hook placement for body suspension. That stuff is not stuff that's happening in classes. I was watching Luis give people like hands-on transfer tips about his transfer class. Like, there's just, it's a really amazing experience. And for me, conference was really emotional because I spent a really long time thinking I would never get to go again. Like, I had made peace with not being allowed to ever attend conference again when I was living in Florida, and Margot and I both got there and both just started crying because we were like, we fucking made it. Like, we did it. We're here. We're finally getting to go to conference. Like, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I'm just so proud of both of us and where we're at in our careers and our lives now that we were able to attend conference and have those wonderful experiences. Now, in talking about this year's conference, I'd be remiss not to mention that a lot of us did get COVID at conference. A lot of us didn't get COVID at conference, myself included. Because I know I'm going to post this video and a bunch of people are going to see it and they're going to be like, oh, well, didn't a bunch of piercers get COVID at conference? Like, what's the deal with that? So yes, quite a few people did end up with COVID after conference. I was unfortunately one of them. Originally this year, when we signed up and registered for conference, masks were a requirement at classes on the expo floor. Like, masks were required to be worn by all attendees at all times, which I was a fan of. And there was like the expo, which is where like I think it's the most congregation of people all at once, was being done in these like time slots to limit the amount of people shopping on the floor at one time, to limit exposure. And then a couple weeks before conference, right after the refund window closed, so you couldn't get your money back for anything you'd spent towards conference thus far, they changed those policies. And they changed those policies due to changes in state policy in Nevada, where it's hosted. And I understand the board was working with the information they had available at the time. They were doing what they felt like was best. You know, there were vocal minorities on either side of the argument. I did opt to wear my mask in classes and on the expo floor. I would say that it was a minority of folks who were wearing their mask most of the time. Most classes, it was largely unmasked with like a couple folks masking. I would say like maybe 20 to 30% of people were masking. I probably could have been better at masking. I wasn't wearing my mask like at the bar, or at the pool, like when I was drinking or eating, and I definitely could have been more cognizant in those situations. But honestly, even if I was, I know someone who was like literally masking 24/7 and only eating in their room who still ended up getting COVID. I do think it could have been better handled. I do wish like the mask policy had stayed in place, and I do wish rapid testing had been more available at the convention. But I also understand that they were working with the information they were given from the hotels and from the local government in the area, and there was a very vocal minority online who was calling for reductions in masking and reductions with the expo floor policy. So I'm sure the board was in a really difficult place with that. And again, you know, I do think that could have been better handled. I do wish that certain policies had stayed in place that got changed, but they weren't. And quite frankly, they were changed after the capacity to get a refund or a rollover for your ticket. So even if a lot of people did not agree with the new changes that were made to the convention, you couldn't get your money back and you couldn't roll it over to next year without like a whole long process of emailing and talking to people. Some people needed to provide doctor's notes. It was a whole big thing. So I really don't fault anyone who did attend and ended up getting it, because for a lot of folks, they simply couldn't afford to not attend and lose the money that they had spent on their travel plans. More people could have been better with masking, yes, but I also don't inherently fault the people who didn't, because I think they were just going by the guidance of the association. I do wish that things had been different, that not so many people had gotten COVID. What I don't like that I've seen afterwards is a lot of folks on both sides of the argument being super nasty to everyone else. People have been mean to piercers who were homesick with COVID, telling them like it was their fault and that's what they got, and people have been mean to the APP and saying like they shouldn't have done this and they fucked up and all this stuff, and I think there was room for improvement on all sides, but I just wish the community kind of came together and handled this a little bit more unified and a little bit more kindly. I do think we can ask our leaders to do better and ask the APP to be more cognizant and more aware of these things. But we don't need to send them like threats or be super nasty to them about that. And on the flip side, I do think we can say that piercers should have had more personal responsibility and been more careful with going, but the rules were changed after people were allowed to get refunds or rollovers. So a lot of folks were in a financial situation or a situation at their studio where they already had guest artists out or whatever the case may be, where it really wasn't easy for them to just not attend and lose that money. So a lot of folks really had no choice to do it. Personal responsibility could have been better. I would have loved to see a lot more folks masking in classes and masking on the expo floor, but at the same time, a lot of folks really didn't have many options except to attend, so it is what it is. I see both sides of it. Despite those hiccups, I know that the conference organizers are already hard at work at preparing things for next year and making sure that things next year are going to run even better, even safer, even smoother. And I'm really excited for conference next year. Currently, I am planning to attend. I would really like to go. I'd really like to hang out and meet more folks. It's an amazing event every year, and even with the flaws that this year had, I would encourage anyone who's thinking about attending conference, anyone who's in the industry, to definitely start their planning for next year. I do think it's such a worthwhile event to attend. And if you saw me at conference and we didn't get a chance to hang out or chat, please hit me up, please message me, please DM me, and if you see me at any events like this or a conference next year, please come up, please chat. I absolutely love it. It's my literal favorite thing. And yeah, that was my conference experience this year. It was definitely very different than a lot of previous years that I've gone, and definitely very emotional for me. I spent so much time just like hugging and crying with people I knew from suspension and like reuniting with people. I feel like this year for me was about like salvaging and reconnecting those old connections that I had lost when I wasn't allowed to attend and when I was pretty isolated down in Florida. And now that I've done that and I've had that, next year's conference can be about learning and growth and building new relationships and new bonds and stuff. But it was very good to be back. It was very, very, very good to be back. Anyway, thanks for sitting down and chatting and hanging out and doing some skincare and some self-care with me. I do legitimately feel better. It's wild how much I'll be having like the worst day and I'll be like, no, I don't want to do any skincare, like take a long shower. I just want to lay in bed and be grumpy. And then I make myself actually get up and do it, and I actually feel a lot better. Don't you hate it when those things actually work? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I think I might still do like a more professional like deep dive about conference, maybe in another video, probably leading up to around like scholarship season. But for today, I just wanted to sit down and chat because this conference was really emotional and really magical. And thanks for sitting and hanging out with me. And I'm sure we'll sit down and chat soon. Bye!